Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to this special edition of Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede and we are coming to you from Des Moines, Iowa. We are just 4 weeks away from the Iowa caucus, and I've spent the week traveling around the state to try and get a sense of what it looks like on the ground. Now, according to the latest Des Moines Register poll, Donald Trump is far ahead of his closest rival, Ron DeSantis, beating him by 32 points. But in Iowa, the caucus, well, that has a way of surprising conventional wisdom. And so we wanted to come here and get a sense of whether DeSantis can still pull off a miracle, or whether his presidential ambitions will likely die on a cold night in January. We have a lot to get to, but I want to start with some sound from Iowa voters, like this woman, Teresa Garman, who we found in Ames, Iowa. She was sitting at a table with a group of ladies, all Iowa State alums, and initially she didn't want to tell me who she was going to caucus for, but eventually she let it slip. There's a lot of people who think that Ron DeSantis doesn't really connect well with folks.
Well, I keep track of what's going on in Florida because we owned a place down there for years, and I think he's done a wonderful job in Florida. I haven't seen him do anything that I have disliked down there.
Why isn't that translated into better numbers for him here?
Because he's against Trump. That's it. If Trump wasn't there, DeSantis would be ahead of everybody.
He is hard to beat, Donald Trump.
Yes.
You think he's going to be the nominee?
Yes, I think he's going to be the nominee. It doesn't matter. You just can't. When you've got him and then all these other ones, little by little by little, they're taking away from DeSantis, for instance.
Okay. Yeah. When are you going to decide? Or have you decided and just don't want to tell anyone?
Yeah, I'm not.
Or are you still undecided at this point?
I'm going to be caucusing for DeSantis.
You are going to be
Yes, I
caucusing
am.
for DeSantis?
Yes, I am.
Did you just make the decision as we were sitting here?
No, I just haven't told people where I am yet.
All right. Well, people in Florida will now know.
Yes, they will. My friends down there will know.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk now about how, what type of president Donald Trump would be if he came back. Does that concern you at all?
Well, all I know is I'm 86 years old, and I don't think we ever had a better economy than we had under Trump. And I told people, I don't want him for my best friend, but I wanted him for my president at that time. Mm-hmm. He did a good job for us. Right now, I'm worried that we're going to end up in a war, the way things are going. I didn't have that concern then. The economy was better. Gas was cheaper. We had gas, too. Don't have to worry about EVs and all of that stuff that I don't like.
Well, if Donald Trump did such a great job for the economy when he was president, why not caucus for him this time?
Because I'm afraid that he probably would not get elected. I think DeSantis might have a better chance.
Well, that's good for DeSantis, but then we found these Trump supporters waiting to hear from the former president this week in Coralville, Iowa. What do you think of some of the other candidates who are running, like, for instance, Ron DeSantis?
I just feel like when he ran for president, his political career's kind of gone downhill a little bit. I mean, he's done some great things for Florida, but should have just stayed in Florida.
And your take on Ron DeSantis?
I don't much care for him personally.
Why is that?
I think Donald Trump helped him where he got at. I think it's kind of like he's backstabbing Trump. So he doesn't have the track record like Donald Trump. He has, he just did Florida, but, I think he's done some good things, but he's nothing compared to Donald Trump.
Anything that you might hear that might persuade you to vote for instance, Ron DeSantis, to switch to him?
There's no way that I would vote for Ron DeSantis, and I'll tell you why, in particular with him. He got a lot of support, a tremendous amount of support from President Trump in 2018 to get him through the primary, which he would have never won the primary. And then to get him elected governor. You wouldn't even be talking about his name. You wouldn't even know his name, even from Florida, except that he became governor because of President Trump's investment with him.
To get a better sense of the race, we sat down with Ann Seltzer, the longtime pollster for the Des Moines Register, whose latest poll has Donald Trump at 51%, Ron DeSantis at 19%, and Nikki Haley at 16%. I asked her what surprised her from the results.
There had been a lot of buildup from our previous poll that Nikki Haley appeared ready to launch, and some question of how she would fare with DeSantis and whether Trump had reached his ceiling, a word I don't like to use. But Trump came out of this poll 8 points ahead of where he had been in October, and that's a significant jump, and broke the 50% mark. So now a majority of likely Republican caucus goers in Iowa say Trump is the candidate that they prefer most.
And you didn't see that big jump for Nikki Haley, given all the press that she had. She pretty much stayed flat in that poll, correct?
She stayed flat indeed.
In talking to the DeSantis campaign, they outlined their very aggressive strategy that they have at the precinct level. You know, they're talking that they have a ground operation that isn't just, you know, knocking on doors, although they say that by the time the caucus happens, they'll probably knock on over 1 million doors. They're talking about the precinct captain campaign that they have and all of that, and that isn't being reflected in the polls, and that at the end of the day, it's who turns out, and they're confident in their turnout machine.
Well, they're absolutely right. 1 million doors would be a lot of doors to knock on.
Are you skeptical?
I'm curious about how much manpower that takes and what they count as a door knock. Does that mean a contact? Because with the electronic world, the digital world, easier to contact than it is to physically knock on that door. So I'm going to be watching to see.
I'm curious if, as you began into this cycle, it seemed that Ron DeSantis was set up well for Iowa, given his, the culture war issues that he fought, the right to life issues that he dealt with. Those issues play well. The perception has been that they play well in Iowa because of the evangelical community, and so that even trying to move to the right of Donald Trump was a strategy designed entirely for Iowa, not so much for New Hampshire or any other state. Are you surprised it hasn't done better?
Well, it would seem that the strategy was to align very closely with Governor Kim Reynolds, and as to who influenced who on that, there's clearly a strong alignment. The one thing that changed is that it was easier to be pro-life before Roe v. Wade was overturned. And that has become a bit more controversial, even in Republican circles, even in evangelical circles, that the heartbeat stage, which is where both states have passed laws, it's not in force here yet. It's still in the court. But that it becomes sort of a sticking point for now that it's possible that abortion could be severely restricted from where it was. So some of those were calculated risks, and some of it is paying off, and some of it maybe not paying off as well as they thought.
I think part of it too is his argument seemed to have been when he entered into this race was that, I'm Donald Trump without the baggage. I'm the candidate who can give you everything Donald Trump gave you, but I can beat Joe Biden. And then all the national polling showing that Trump is ahead of Joe Biden really undercut the legs out from under Ron DeSantis, and I don't think he's had a strategy to argue his viability or his path since.
The thing that wasn't in his equation was that Donald Trump is an entertainer. And so there's a part of what's going on there, and by entertainer, I mean has a charismatic appeal that he makes people laugh and he makes people feel good. And I don't think Ron DeSantis carries that off quite as well. So he can have the right policies, but this election may not be decided on policies.
Did you pick up on some of that in the polling, the charisma gap, as it may be, or the awkwardness that people seem to attribute to Ron DeSantis? Does that come through, do you think?
It's a little flagging. So one of the things we do is ask your first choice, your second choice, and then if a candidate is not your first or second, are you actively considering them? And we add those three numbers together. We call that your footprint. That is, what's the possible for you here in Iowa? And DeSantis was even in previous polls with Donald Trump, and maybe even surpassed by a point or two. It's now Donald Trump leading that too. So this is your total opportunity, and his number has fallen behind.
All right. Obviously, last question. Obviously, one of the things that I was known for is that people tend to decide late. Iowans like to hear the candidates 3, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times before making up their final choice. So the fact that we're still a little over 4 weeks away, there's still room here. Or give me your assessment to how solid or how locked in or cemented in you think the numbers are at this point.
The numbers look pretty locked in for Donald Trump. He gets a majority of people supporting him, and 70% of those say their mind is made up. And that's twice as many as Ron DeSantis' supporters say their mind is made up. And the same goes for Nikki Haley. However, I have seen a lot in my decades of polling caucuses to never say never. So we've seen candidates who were polling at the mid-single numbers suddenly on the first day of our polling in the last poll jump to double digits and keep moving day by day by day up in our poll. And this is Rick Santorum I'm talking about, and he won the Iowa caucuses, not by much, and it took a few days to sort that out. And when you've seen that, it sticks with you, and it is a reminder, never say never. Things can happen.
That might have been a better name for a super PAC than Never Back Down. Never say never. When we come back, we examine why DeSantis believes he still has a path in Iowa. Stay with us. DeSantis, do you have a second for Miami?
Oh, we're having a great time making the case to Iowans. It's good to see you up here.
Thanks, Jim. We'll see you at the next one.
Welcome back. That was Casey DeSantis this week in Iowa, and as we followed her around the state, it was clear that she is her husband's greatest asset on the campaign trail. Although she did get herself and the campaign in trouble last week when she invited moms and grandmas from around the country to come and participate in the caucus for her husband. The only problem with that, you have to be an Iowa resident to vote. Oops. Now, while we were here in Iowa, we aired a live hour-long show, and I want to replay part of that special, including my conversation with Amanda Rooker, the chief political reporter for our CBS affiliate here in Iowa, KCCI.
Iowa breaks late. There's always surprises. However, we've seen the trajectory of Donald Trump's support over the last few months. He was polling at 40, then he was polling at 43, now he's polling at 51%. And this does seem to be an unprecedented race where you have a quasi-incumbent that's running in the caucuses. That's something we haven't seen in the past. But the caveat to that is, like you said, there has been surprises. There still could be, but I think we're running out of time for there to be some sort of major upset.
This brings us into, again, this idea of the grassroots effort, the grassroots campaign. Earlier today, I had a chance to talk to the director of caucus training for the Never Back Down, the group, the super PAC that's backing Ron DeSantis, Russell Saffel. It's about 2.5 minutes. Let's play that sound and get your reaction on the other end. Let's go ahead.
I personally don't care what the polls say. I can tell you right now that our ground game is tenfold better than Trump's or Haley's or anybody else's out there.
What is it about your ground game that you think sets you apart?
So I have been in this game since, I'd say for decades. I've been in the political world for decades, and I have never seen a more organized or energized organization leading this charge to elect a candidate. I mean, it is the most functional operation I have seen in all of my years. We've got hundreds of volunteers across the state. We've got people. We've got offices all over the state. We've hit 2 million doors in.
Well, not in Iowa. $2 million.
$2 million across the nation. Right. We've hit 750,000 doors in Iowa only, just in Iowa. To believe in a poll is crazy. If you're driving your campaign on a poll, you're going to lose.
Well, in so much of what Iowa is about who is able to get their people out on a cold January night into a specific location.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
really what it's about, right?
Yep. If whoever gets the most people there to vote for their candidate is going to win.
And that's where you think that the folks you have on the ground, your precinct captains, all of that sort of thing, it will be different.
Our training, our modules that we train our precinct captains with, they're second to none.
Now, 8 years ago, when Donald Trump, nearly won the Iowa caucus, he had no operation here. They do argue that they do have an operation this time around. What are you seeing? What do you see from the Trump side?
You know, I'm sure they do have an operation around. I know Trump likes to have these big events, and that's pretty much the only thing he shows up to. What I can tell you is that Ron DeSantis is out there beating the streets with the rest of us. He's hit all 99 counties in the state of Iowa.
You supported Donald Trump in 16 and 20.
I did.
Why now Ron DeSantis?
I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of sick of the political theater. It's become the Donald Trump show. And I'm sick of watching the Donald Trump show. And I want somebody that's going to actually step up and show true leadership, come in and bring morality and integrity back to the White House and get this country set back on track.
Amanda, I just want to get your reaction. As you were watching that, you said, oh, I've got a point I want to make. Go ahead.
Well, one thing I want to explain maybe to some of your Florida viewers.
Please translate Iowa for us.
Well,
yes.
so the one very unique point and part of the caucus that's different than a primary is when you go into that room, each campaign is allowed to have someone in the room give a speech before people decide which candidate they want to support. And there, when he was talking about DeSantis's ground game, one thing that has really set DeSantis apart is he has these coalitions of people in Iowa. He has coalitions of parents, coalitions of pastors, coalitions of police officers and sheriffs. And why that specifically matters is there is over 1,600 different precinct locations that Iowans are going to gather in, basements, churches. And DeSantis will now have influential people, mothers, or the pastor that everyone knows in that community, that sheriff or police officer that will be able to make a compelling speech. And I just talked to an Iowan the other day who said a couple caucus cycles ago, he went in to the caucus having a candidate he planned to support. He listened to a compelling speech for another candidate, and he changed his mind.
Among the community leaders DeSantis is counting on are evangelical pastors. The evangelical community is a large part of DeSantis' strategy, and when you look at all of the culture war battles DeSantis has inflicted on Florida over the past 3 years, the 6-week abortion ban, the attacks on the gay and lesbian community, and all of the anti-woke bluster, it was clearly done in part to court the evangelical vote here in Iowa. I had a chance to talk to an evangelical pastor from eastern Iowa, Iowa State Representative John Dunwell, and I started by asking him why he thinks DeSantis isn't doing better in the polls.
He is running against the former president of the United States. So let's just keep that in mind. There is a little difference in terms of recognition and familiarity, etc. But what I will tell you when you're on the ground, Ron DeSantis, 99 county tour, Jasper County, my county, was the last county he came to. I brought friends there who were in support of Donald Trump. And once they heard his message, once they heard his story, once they heard him answering questions, they flipped from being President Trump supporters to being DeSantis supporters. It's just a matter of getting out there, getting your message out there, having people hear it and understand it. The second part of that is, I think you have to realize a lot of Americans are frustrated. I mean, they're frustrated with what's going on in the Biden administration with a destructive agenda, and so they're looking for a disruptor. And so Donald Trump naturally fills that role of being a disruptor. He's going to shake things up. The difference is Governor DeSantis has that same ability to can say we're not going to do status quo, but he also brings performance behind it. He brings a vision and a strategy, not just to say this is a problem, we need to fix it. Not just to stand and say, you know, I'm going to get me elected and tomorrow I'm going to build the wall and have Mexico pay for it. He's a guy who says, not only am I going to say that statement, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to realistically get it done so that I can accomplish it. And that's where I think people just have to realize Governor DeSantis is a performer. He gets things done.
You're an evangelical pastor.
I am.
How important is the evangelical vote? And the tendency, from what I gather, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the evangelical vote tends to break late in the process, that it tends to, you know, in the final maybe 2 or 3 weeks, in this period of time that we're in now, the last 4 weeks of the campaign. What do you think is going to happen over these next 4 weeks?
Well, so first off, you're exactly right. The evangelical vote is extremely important. There are some polls that would say in some of our past caucuses, it could be as high as 62% of the voters were evangelical voters. So it's a significant portion. The evangelical voters split right now. It's not all in one camp or the other. They are late deciders in the process. And so the reality is it's about Ron DeSantis getting out there, sharing his message. He's a phenomenal ground game, not just in the big metropolitan areas, but across rural Iowa. See, in Iowa, caucuses are not about big media events. They're not about big events. They're about getting a chance to hear and to see and to experience your candidate up close, just like you and I are experiencing. So when he gets out there and continues that process of doing that, more and more people get a chance to say, this is the kind of leader that I'm looking for. So I actually believe there'll be a lot of flipping and a lot of switching. Remember, caucuses are not primaries. It is held on January 15th in the evening. They're run by the political parties. You have to have a little bit of gumption to show up and to support your candidate. Even in the recent poll, was it 46% of those, I don't know what the number exactly is, of those who are supporting President Trump are first-time caucus goers in their mind. So let's see if they show up. Ron DeSantis has been working out there, gathering that support, not just yesterday or last month. He's been doing it for months here in Iowa. And so he has a chance to build upon that structure, build upon what he has already laid as an established foundation as to why he should be president of the United States.
You supported Marco Rubio in the caucus in
did.
2016. You supported the re-election of the president, obviously. Correct. In 2020, President Trump.
You're calling me a loser, huh?
No, this time, this time you're supporting Ron DeSantis. We were talking before. I think part of it is also you believe character matters in a race like this. Is that based on what you see in Ron DeSantis' character, or what you're afraid from what Donald Trump's character says about him if he's returned to the White House? Maybe
the best way to answer it is, it's what I see when I look at Ron DeSantis. I look at Vivek Ramaswamy, I look at Ambassador Haley, I look at President Trump. I have options. I don't have to say, well, President Trump will be a better choice than President Joe Biden and his destructive agenda. I have three other choices to look at. When I look at Governor Ron DeSantis, I see a man who's committed to his family. When I look at Governor Ron DeSantis, I don't see all of this baggage. And I'm not talking about the lawsuits that have been drummed up against the president. I'm just talking about the baggage that's created with a life that was lived a little bit differently. And so I got choices. I have choices this time. And so I can choose Ron DeSantis as being the person who has the character that I'd like for my kids to say, that's the president of the United States.
Does Donald Trump returning to the White House scare you?
Does it scare me? In comparison to the other three, yes. Scares me less than Joe Biden, but yes, I have some fears. You know, President Trump has betrayed me. I mean, here's a man who said he was about life. And he did a great job in appointing Supreme Court justices, which I'd anticipate any Republican president to do. So hats off to him that he did what we should be doing as Republicans. But when he stands before the American public and he criticizes a heartbeat bill, he's not a pro-life president.
Anything else I didn't cover that you would have wanted me to cover or ask you about?
No, just that it's still early. We have 30 days to the caucus. A lot's going to be happening. A lot's going to be changing. But we just have to give opportunity for the process to work. I am long ways from saying, it's already a decided deal. We've always been surprised by the polls. I think we'll be surprised by the polls again.
By the way, if you want to see our hour-long streaming special from Iowa, you can find it on cbsmiami.com. We'll be right back. Well, that's it from Iowa. In just 4 weeks, the entire country will anxiously wait to see what happens here. Will Ron DeSantis survive, or will Donald Trump continue his march to the nomination? I'll certainly be watching closely, but I'll be doing it from the warmer confines of Miami. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.